Hello, today I'll be conducting a data overview for Kennesaw Mountain High School. The purpose of this data overview is to analyze the components of the College and Career Ready Performance Index, or CCRPI, for Kennesaw Mountain High School, and to determine achievement gaps between students in different subgroups on assessments included in the CCRPI from the years of 2012 to 2014, because those are the CCRPI, that's the CCRPI era. Okay, it still continues on through 2015 and the current school year. However, the data for these assessments has yet to be published by the State Department of Education. So first off, we're going to look at the enrollment data for 2014. As you can tell, it's a relatively diverse school. White students make up roughly a little bit more than half of the student body, 53%. Black students make up a quarter of the students, Hispanics make up 14%, and then Asians, multiracial, make up the rest. Today we're going to be focusing, we look at subgroups on the white, black, and Hispanic students, as those make up 92% of the student body. Sorry about that. So those three subgroups make up 92% of the student body and make up the majority of the students in the school. Over time, you can see that the population has been relatively steady. We've had about the same number of students within 100 of each other from year to year, with the peak being in 2013. Again, the subgroups are remaining relatively constant. You see there's a slight peak in 2013 for white students and Hispanic students. African American students made a slight gain from 2012 to 2014, but overall relatively stable. So there's not been a whole lot of change in this regard over the last 3 years at the school. So the data should show some relative consistencies throughout time. So we're looking at the CCRPI components, and these the main ones are the end-of-course test. The 7 tests we'll be looking at are listed there below. There is one more in physical science, but our school does not offer physical science. We instead offer physics for those students, so that was not included at all. And the graduation rate for the school. The reason we're concentrating on those 3 things are they make up a vast majority of the CCRPI. Of the CCRPI, 60% of the overall score is based on achievement data. Of the achievement data, 40% is content mastery, which is students meeting or exceeding standards on end-of-course tests. And the graduation rate is another 30% of that achievement data. Progress, which is student growth profiles on end-of-course tests relative to students throughout the state, make up 25% of the total of the CCRPI. And the achievement gap, which is the achievement gap between different subgroups within the school, make up 10% of the total CCRPI score, and that is again on end-of-course test. So if you were to break that down and analyze how students did just on the end-of-course test, you see that EOCTs account for 59% of the CCRPI score. Additionally, the graduation rate accounts for 18% of the CCRPI score. So we're looking at 77% of the CCRPI score based on just end-of-course test and graduation rate. So a pretty significant amount. So we're going to go through these different end-of-course tests, some of which are really high scoring with very low achievement gaps, and some of which have low achieving and huge achievement gaps. So let's go through these individually. I'm going to fly through the first few here because they are pretty well. 9th grade literature end-of-course test. The dark line at the top is the school proficiency and proficiency at students meeting or exceeding standards. The blue line in the middle is the district, and the bottom line of the state, or the gold line at the bottom, is the state score. As you can see, the school is relatively high. If you look at the scale over here, it goes from 80 to 94. So the drop here you see from 2013 to 2014 was just about 1.5%. It wasn't a huge gain, or a huge drop, I should say. Same thing for the state gain here, about 1.5%. So we fell off a little bit there in that last year, but overall the graph is a little bit deceiving based on the scale that's provided, so not a huge change there for us. Subgroups, looking at our subgroup graphs, on these graphs the gold line at the top is going to be Hispanic students, the blue line in the middle is going to be black students, and the gray line at the bottom will be white students. As you can see, white students very stable, black students very stable, a little peak here in 2013, but again relatively stable. Hispanic students are making some slight gains over time, which is good to see. So that achievement gap is closing for Hispanic students. The achievement gap remains the same for between white and black students, but relatively Stable data over here, high achievement data gap. The achievement gaps are relatively small, within 10 points, which is a pretty small value compared to some of the other ones we'll see. Same thing with American literature. Very high scoring, the highest scoring end of course test at the state, district, and school levels. You can see again the scale here kind of leaves the graph to be a little bit misleading. It goes from basically 84 to 100 points. So even if we see a dip here, it's about a point, maybe a point and a half of proficiency. It's good gains by the district and the state. So again, relatively stable data. Looking here at the disaggregated data, again, really high achievement here. White students relatively stable, black students relatively stable. Hispanic students made slight gains to 2013 and slight fallback to 2014, but again, relatively stable. Very high achievement, very low achievement gap between the different subgroups we're looking at today. So not a whole lot of issues here with American literature either. Okay, U.S. history, EOCT. You can see our school made a large jump, and looking at the scale here, it goes from 60 to 95, so each of these lines is a 5-point jump here. So our school made a relatively great jumps here from 2013 to 2014. And I'm going to attribute that a lot to hiring a new teacher who taught almost exclusively U.S. history and really has showed great gains on the EOCT scores that we've seen in the past. So a lot of credit goes to him for that growth we saw within the school. And those are increasing our gap over the district and the state as well in that time. Looking at the disaggregated data, you can see the white students made gains from 2013 to 2014. Hispanic students made large gains from 2013 to 2014, and black students are making large gains from 2012 to 2013, and then 2013 to 2014, over 10-point gain that last year. So that achievement gap is definitely closing in U.S. history, which is great to see. Again, high achievement, low achievement gap. So those first three EOCTs we've looked at, not a lot of complaints to have so far. Now we start moving in a little bit here to where we could have some growth. First one is economics. Again, relatively good scores there. The state and the district both had a slight increases from 2013 to 2014, while ours remained relatively constant. So maybe some areas to look at to improve there. Looking at the data, white students were constant from year to year. Black students were constant year to year. Hispanic students took a slight dip from 2013 to 2014. The achievement gap increased in those students. So, some things you might want to look at there would be that achievement gap between the white and black students and the Hispanic students to improve upon. It'd be interesting to see what the 2015 data looks like to see if that trend is continuing or if that was just an aberration for Hispanic students that 1 year. So, achievement gap is a little bit larger than you probably would like, but hopefully that would increase over time, so something to look at. Next, we'll look at biology. The district made huge gains on the biology EOCT from 2013 to 2014. Again, looking at the data, the scale here, each of these jumps is only 2 points. So even though ours look like it goes down and comes back up, it's going from near 86 to 85 back to just slightly above 86% proficiency. So not huge gains, but the district is definitely closing in on us. As you see here, though, the achievement gap is rather large. White students are relatively stable from year to year. Black students relatively stable. Hispanic students decent, big 10-point step back, and then closing the gap again in 2014. However, those achievement gaps are relatively large. Okay, between the white and black students, it's between 15 and 20-point achievement gap every year. And between white and Hispanic students, it's nearly a 30-point gap in 2013, closing back to a 25-point gap in 2014. So definitely some areas to improve upon in the biology EOCT. One issue that I hear commonly with biology teachers is they feel like there's so much vocabulary that's new for the students to learn that a lot of our Hispanic students in our school, we have a high number of English language learners, and some of that vocabulary is difficult for the students to pick up upon because they don't have a strong basis on normal English words, and now you're throwing in these very scientific words that like eukaryotic and prokaryotic. I'm talking about a cell that the students really, even the native English speakers, have difficulty learning. So there's an issue there. But definitely some work to do on biology in terms of closing those achievement gaps. So now we're looking at math scores, and math is a whole different animal compared to the others. As you see, 2012, everybody's happy. Scores aren't great, but they're okay. To 2013, the scores dropped dramatically. And it's not because this incoming group of ninth graders was all much weaker than the ones previously. It's because there was a whole new curriculum. In 2012, this score includes students who were on the Math 1 curriculum, which were for repeating students only, and for students that were in the GPS algebra course, which was the Georgia Performance Standards algebra. In 2013, all of these students were on the CC GPS algebra, the Common Core GPS standards that were written. So there's a huge decrease in student achievement from those years at the district, the state, and the school level. So a lot of that has to do with the new curriculum, teachers not being familiar with it. Students, even though they've been taught the quote-unquote new math for years, it still asks much more of them in terms of higher order thinking. So a big drop from 2012 to 2013. However, there was gains from 2013 to 2014. Even though they were very slight, it does show some promise that teachers are probably figuring out what they need to do for their students to be successful. At the school level, looking at the disaggregated data, again, not very good. 2012 is kind of our outlier here. It's again the old curriculum. 2013, 2014, the ones we really need to look at. White students did not do very well, but they did show improvement from 2013 to 2014. Black students, again, in the 30s the first year, upper 40s the second year. So a gain of 10 points of proficiency, but still over half the students are not proficient in Algebra 1. And then Hispanic students actually showed a step back from 2013 to 2014, from the mid-30s to the lower mid-30s. So low achievement here for these students on this CCGPS Algebra End of Course test, and the achievement gaps are huge. So we have a lot of work to do to catch up our Black and Hispanic students on these tests. Okay, so looking at algebra, like we saw before, big drop in 2013 as those students were getting the new curriculum. So now let's look at geometry, and the big drop comes in 2014 because now that's when those same group of students who took the algebra test in 2013, they're now part of that new curriculum wave, and they're taking this new test in 2014, the CCGPS Analytic Geometry class. 2012 and 2013 still included some Math 2 students, and then 2013 was GPS Geometry in addition to some Math 2 students. So a little bit easier end of course test, as you can tell. It goes from in the mid 80s to near 90, dropping down into the mid 60s. So a 25-point drop based on this new curriculum, which was kind of pretty consistent with the algebra scores we just saw. Again, it's hard to make any kind of trend evaluations because of the change in curriculum. So let's just simply look at 2014. 2014 white students scored a proficiency of about 75%. Blacks and Hispanic students in the low 40s. So over a 30-point achievement gap between our white students and our minority students. That is very disconcerting. But again, is in line with the algebra and close to in line with the biology. So some work to get done here in our math courses and our science courses for the end of course tests. So let's skip ahead and let's look at the graduation rates quickly, and we'll come back and kind of recap these in a second. Graduation rate, the state and the district showed slight increases. We had a big jump from 2012 to 2013, one of the largest in Cobb County. And then it dropped down from 2013 to 2014, which is one of the biggest drops in Cobb County. And then this year's data, which I did not include just to be consistent with the others, but again, we showed a large increase. According to our administration and guidance department, they feel like the big drop in 2014, most of those students were those that had unenrolled from school, transferred, but did not have the records request sent from their new school. So we had no track of where they were and if they graduated. And if we don't know where the students go, then they count against our graduation rate. So this is a big issue that we have to be aware of. So get some bad press in the newspaper, seeing a big drop in graduation rate. However, I feel like that was due to more bookkeeping and paperwork issues instead of actual student achievement. So if the 2015 data was included, you would see a big jump back up. And actually was the highest increase in Cobb County from 2014 to 2015 per the Marietta Daily Journal. Looking at the graduation rates disaggregated, white students very consistent from year to year. Black students, big jump from 2012 to 2013, and then falling back down to 2014. And again, that could be due to some of the transiency issues. Our African American students tend to be some of our more transient students, and that big drop off could be due to the fact that we don't know where the students went. Not necessarily that our black students were performing worse than they did previously, but that we don't know where they've transferred to. So a 15-point drop in our African American students is a pretty big deal. Hispanic students showed a big jump from 2012 to 2013, then fell off again to 2014. But again, that slight decrease could possibly just be transiency issues. So some things that our school has already realized and addressed and figured out that they need to do better in terms of keeping up with these students who leave Kennesaw Mountain. So overall graduation rate, again, if 2015 was included, we probably see some different information included there. So some conclusions we've seen here on our end of course tests. We had high achievement, low achievement gaps on 9th grade Lit, American Lit, and U.S. History. High achievement with moderate achievement gaps, especially between our white and Hispanic students on economics. High achievement with large achievement gaps between our white students and our minority students on biology. And then low achievement with large achievement gaps on algebra and geometry. As you can see, sometimes when those higher order thinking skills are included, as you go down this continuum here, definitely geometry is probably the hardest course of all those listed, with algebra probably being the second hardest and biology being the third hardest. So we're going into the more difficult courses. Sometimes a lot more vocabulary that's necessary to be picked up, and definitely a lot more analysis, especially because those last two courses do have that common core aspect to them. Not necessarily common core, but they do involve a lot of those common core components that involve analysis and application instead of just recall like some of the earlier ones do. You can see that we do really need to work on closing that achievement gap for those students. We've got to do a better job with our minority students in biology, algebra, and geometry, especially if we want to keep our CCRPI score as being at a very high level. So just some things to look at and things to think about as we keep on in the CCRPI era, attempting to improve our standing, improve our score overall, and keep our students achieving at a high level. Are there any questions? Thank you.